A while ago, I became a Berserk fan, having heard a ton of good things about the series over the years as a fan of other dark fantasy media such as Dark Souls. I decided to watch the 1997 anime, and I enjoyed it enough to read the original manga. When initially watching the anime, one scene made me pause and ponder. Episode 9, the scene where Griffith discusses assassinating Count Julius with Guts. At a certain point in the scene, Guts picks up a book. This made me think, does Guts actually know how to read? The main argument for Guts not being able to read is the lack of proof that he can, and that him not being able to read would make a ton of sense. After being born, Guts was almost instantly taken in by a mercenary group led by Gambino. It can be presumed that he was taught to walk and talk by his adoptive mother, Shizu, and that he was taught to fight by Gambino, but there is no evidence he was ever taught to read by either of the two. The manga skips from him killing Gambino and escaping from the group to the siege where Griffith first spots Guts, and there is nothing to imply Guts went to school between those two events. Additionally, when Guts talks with Judo and Kirkus about his plan to leave the Band of the Hawk, or Band of the Falcon, depending on the translation, he says that when he first killed a man, he didn't know right from left, and that he hasn't learned anything non-battle related since then. While knowing directions is an essential skill in sword-to-sword combat, reading isn't. The setting Berserk takes place in should also be considered. The vast majority of the Golden Age arc, which is the most grounded in reality part of Guts' life, takes place in Midland, which is based on medieval Europe. While the topic of illiteracy in medieval Europe is often debated, one thing almost everyone agrees on is that it was way more common than it is these days. Now that we established the reasons why Guts shouldn't be able to read, let's look at arguments in favor of him being literate, which will be addressed from least to most convincing. Argument 1. The book. After Count Julius tries and fails to assassinate Griffith, Guts and Griffith discuss a revenge assassination. They talk in a room full of books, and in the 1997 anime, Guts can be seen holding a book, implying that he can read. This argument is easily countered by the original manga, where the scene is expanded upon. When Guts asks Griffith about his book collection, he talks about the different types of books he has, and then gives Guts a picture book, the same one he can be seen holding in the anime adaptation. Guts isn't holding it to actually read it, but because it was handed to him. Argument 2. Griffith and Casca. Casca, just like Guts, likely wasn't taught to read due to her parents having 5 other children to deal with. Despite this, when Guts tries to leave the Band of the Hawk, Casca can be seen reading a book. Some have speculated that Griffith might have taught certain members of his group skills like reading, as having illiterate commanders in your army could be quite embarrassing. While technically possible, we also have to remember that Casca was sold by her parents when she was 12 years old, while most children are taught reading around the age of 6. She also might have learned to read because she wanted to, and her being able to read doesn't necessarily mean that Guts can. Argument 3. The Wicker Man. When looking up if anyone else had asked about Guts being able to read, this page was often brought up in different threads. After entering Skellig Island, Guts and his group encounter a Wicker Man, and Guts and Shirk briefly discuss the creature, and one of the characters says, "I've read about them in books." Many people interpreted this as Guts saying both lines in this panel, but that's incorrect. If you look closely, you can see a second speech bubble tail. Guts only says Wicker Man, while the line about books is said by Shirk. This is not proof that Guts can read, just a common misconception. Argument 4. V for Victory. After getting rescued by Moonlight Boy and the Marrows, Shirk shows Guts 2 fingers to see if he regained his eyesight. Guts simply responds, "Is that V for Victory?" So, case closed, right? Guts knows how to spell, so he most likely knows how to read. Except, no, as this is not proof that Guts knows how to spell the word victory. During World War II, the British Prime Minister Winston Churchill popularized the usage of the V hand sign as a symbol of victory. This isn't Guts showing knowledge of how to spell a word, it's him recognizing a popular symbol. Now, one may argue that since Berserk takes place in a world based on medieval Europe, Guts should not be aware of a symbol that only became recognized in World War II. But I'd say it's no more of a real-world continuity issue than Pac making references to popular movies, or Gaston being self-aware of his existence as a minor character in a larger story. Argument 5. Guts knows physics. When Guts is fighting inside of the Sea God, he's cornered on top of a ship mast. To escape both the Sea God's stomach acid and parasites, he uses his sword to rip an opening on top of the stomach and exploits the difference in gas pressure to fly through the hole. This was an intentional decision, so he is aware of how gas pressure works, something he should have no idea even exists. This is the most damning piece of evidence for Guts being able to read, because while it's not related to reading in any way, it does confirm that Guts is smarter than we think. Therefore, it's theoretically possible that Guts could have learned how to read. To sum everything up, there is no clear-cut evidence that Guts can read, and there are several things to imply that he can't, but it is possible that he is actually literate. Admittedly, this video is a bit biased, as I think Guts not being able to read is a lot funnier than him being able to. As always, like and subscribe, but more importantly, if you have any arguments for Guts being able or not being able to read, leave them in the comments. I'm fairly sure that I've covered everything, but there's a chance I might have missed something. I also have a main channel, which I recommend checking out. Rest in peace, Miura.